And I want to start with Chelsea because they're tracking to come 7th. That isn't my prediction. That isn't my hatred of Chelsea. It's not that at all. It is based upon the fact that since they beat Brentford 2-1 in December and moved themselves within 2 points of the league and everybody started talking about title races, in that period of time, their run of form has been poor. And we've seen other teams like Aston Villa and Newcastle in that time improve their performances. And I was looking at this today, that this came out today, and I thought this was very, very interesting indeed for Chelsea. That when you look at the points per game in the last 15 matches that Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Manchester City, Aston Villa have all got, if everything stays pretty much as it is in terms of performances and the amount of games each side wins, so that therefore the points per game being picked up, Chelsea are coming in 7th with 7 games remaining. They're going to end up on around 62 points. And the Brentford game was another sort of example of that at the weekend, not able to score, playing well, but not getting over the line. And I know that a lot of Chelsea fans are still sitting in this space of, well, we're 4th, though. There's not much to panic about. But they are not picking up wins against anybody that in the last 15 games is above them in the form table. Every win is against sides that have fallen below them. And the likes of, listen, maybe Newcastle drop off like people predicted, but Villa are picking up points now much more than they were in the opening sort of 15 games of the season. Newcastle and Forest are in that space. And even City that are kind of coughing and spluttering over the line, they are all averaging more points per game in the last 3 to 4 months of football than Chelsea. So again, what I'm basing it on is maths, and the maths is based on the performances. Can anyone see a world where they still make the top 4? Does anyone see where they're going to improve their performances? Because yesterday seemed to be just another really bad day for them.
No, I don't know where. I'll be honest. I think they'll finish between 6th and 8th. So I think 7th like that is bang on. They're not scoring goals. They got 3 goals in 2 legs against Copenhagen. 1 against Leicester, didn't score against Brentford, didn't score against Arsenal. Okay, they beat Southampton 4-0, but let's be honest, they're a championship side, and they beat us 1-0. I mean, for a side that's, 1.3, 1.4 billion down, to not have that much firepower, and I'm looking at Enzo Maresca now, like, okay, Palmer's not, what's he now, saying like 11 games without a goal, but no one else is really stepping up now. What's Sancho doing? Okay, Jackson's his first game back. Pedro Neto. There's too many question marks over him now. And if they finish 7th and they sack another manager, they're going to be 3 years down this process. They had Poch, they've had Maresca. Who they're going to go for now? I know they need a goalkeeper. I know they need a number 9. I know they need a centre back. But the amount of goal, I mean, they got 8 goals in the last 11 games, something like that. I mean, that's absolutely insane. We've scored a lot more goals. We've got players like bloody Timo Werner and Brandon Johnson half the time. And we've had countless injuries. But yes, we're still scoring more goals. They've been outscored by flipping Ipswich in the last 10 games. Ipswich have scored more goals. So I don't know. I think Maresca will, even if he wins the Conference League, I personally, if I was a Chelsea fan, I'd want him out, because I just don't see what this season they started off really well, but everyone else was shit.
When you say that, though, I want to defend Maresca slightly. He said yesterday in the comment here from Rahman puts it out, the difference was goals. I mean, Brentford, in fairness, had some really good chances to score as well, but they're just not creating the clear-cut chances and scoring the goals. Is that the coach, or are we just looking at the fact that the majority of Chelsea's attacking line isn't good enough?
Okay, I think who has the better attacking line when they're all fit, Spurs or Chelsea?
Sorry?
Who has a better attacking line when they're all fit, Spurs or Chelsea?
Spurs. And you can prove that because you guys score more goals.
No, it's a different style of play.
Well, wait, but Henry, do you mean the front 3 or like the front 4?
When front 3, when Jackson's fully fit and firing, when Palmer's sitting in the 10.
Okay, so
who is the front 3 that you're referring to?
Name the players.
Neto, Sancho, and Jackson.
Oh, yeah, you would have to say that.
I would say. Let's break it down. So we would all agree Palmer's the best of everyone, right? He's there, right? So who, honestly, now we're not saying any of them are world class, so no one get triggered. Everyone calm down. It's the argument here. I'm talking to the audience more so. If you had to pick Son or Sancho, who are you guys picking?
Yeah, Son. But I'm taking Jackson over Solanke and I'm taking Neto over Johnson.
I'm not saying Jackson over Solanke.
Everyone's jumping
over Jackson.
Let's bear in mind if you're doing a front four, because you want to include a 10. If you're doing a front four,
you're taking Son. I agree.
Palmer is the only Chelsea player that gets in.
So you're taking Solanke this season over Jackson?
I'm taking Solanke up top. I'm taking Kulusevski on the right.
Hasn't scored in how many games?
Yeah, I'm taking Solanke.
You can push us on it as much as you want.
I'm taking Solanke up top. I'm taking Kulusevski on the right, and I'm taking Son on the left.
So what are you basing Solanke on in a Spurs shirt that's better than Jackson? What has Solanke done in a Spurs shirt to be better than Jackson?
I think Solanke's a better striker.
I believe he's a better player.
Okay, I get it in Bournemouth.
Whether you want to call it in a Spurs shirt, because you're asking us to refer to Jackson over 18 months and Solanke over 6 months, and that's not fair. But he's a better player.
Okay, but this season, this season,
he's a better player than Jackson.
Now you're narrowing the argument, and what's also really
because we're going off of talent, Henry. Like you're talking about this season.
So
Henry, just slow down a minute because I don't want the conversation narrow too much. I want to just point out as well. Barring Cole Palmer, I don't think any of us want to buy any of these players, by the way. Like, in terms of genuinely improving our teams, none of us are going, I want Son this summer or I want Solanke this summer. But you guys, at the end of it, what do you explain the volume of goals? They've had, you and them have got similar XG this season. So the quality of chances have been very similar, but you guys are one of the highest goal scorers in the league. They're the second biggest underperformers of XG in the league. How's that Maresca's fault, in your opinion?
Because a manager is essentially the last one to be, is the first one to be blamed, isn't he? And I look at Chelsea's team. I think everyone wanted Neto in the summer. Loads of teams were after him. We were after him. Chelsea were after him. Arsenal were after him. I don't think Maresca has got the most out of his resources. I think Jackson's a good striker. I think Sancho's the one. I don't get why they signed Sancho. But I think Madueke with better coaching would be better. I don't think Maresca is that good of a coach. And I think when Chelsea, up until December, they were absolutely firing. But there was a lot of other teams that were dropping off. Then teams started finding them out. You got to the new year. They didn't sign anyone. And since then, it's coincidentally that Palmer's dropped off, the form has dropped off, but Maresca hasn't got an answer in his coaching. Okay, they changed system. They put Caicedo at right back. Then he goes into the midfield.
But Henry, at the start of the season, where did you expect Chelsea to finish before that form that you saw? Before you saw how they started the season.
Yeah, with that squad, they should be in the top four. Let's be honest. When anyone in the league, if Maresca got sacked tomorrow, go after him. No, they wouldn't.
And that's a fair comment. But the argument here is this: for me, I think they did a very good squad, and they're still very good players. But I feel what this season has exposed is that a number of these players, when the pressure gets on top, aren't good enough. And ironically, I know not everyone likes my view of football, which is fair, but how you handle pressure, so the direction that your consistency goes in when pressure is applied, is an element of the game that most people want to ignore. For instance, scoring goals for a mid-table team at this stage of the season is easier than delivering in a tight title race or a massive Champions League games, because the pressure is different. So for me, I saw those Chelsea players look brilliant up until Christmas, and then title race talk happened. And do you remember what a lot of the Chelsea players were saying? I don't even look at the league table. I don't even know where we are. Title race? What's a title race? And it was just obvious they were talking about it and thinking about it. And from that point until now, it's gone down the toilet. And I just look at that and think, we're in this point. And I understand Maresca is made mistakes. I'm not saying he's perfect, but I've watched these games. I've watched every single match. They have been in positions for the right pass to be played and not done it, for a fairly simple shot to be taken and a goal to be scored, and they have missed. I think it's disingenuous to say all of that.
Yeah, like I don't think
the manager.
Yeah, like I don't think that they sack Maresca, because for me, I think it's more of a board issue in terms of poor squad building. Because if you look at their team, they do have a lot of talent, but a lot of their guys, especially in attack, are very passive. Like aside from Cole Palmer, maybe like Madueke, but he's mid. they don't really have any aggressive attackers, right? Like they don't have anybody in front of goal that is known for scoring like that, right? And then when people they get annoyed with Sancho because he's not aggressive, right? Like Pedro Neto's not really a goal threat. Nicholas Jackson is hit or miss. I don't really think that Maresca can do that much better with this team. I don't think any manager can go in there right now and get better out of that attack. I think this is just what they are, right? I think that the board, instead of them going out there and getting a proven goal scorer up front, they still sign more young players and all these different things. So in my opinion, I don't think that Maresca's job is under pressure because I don't think that at Chelsea, the board, I don't think that there's that pressure of top 4 from the board. You can tell by how
Will.
they talk.
I hear what you're saying there, but it's confusing if that's not the goal of top 4 this season for the board in terms of they got rid of Poch for what reason there? He wasn't that far behind the top 4 last season. So why would they get rid of a manager that then potentially doesn't get?
They didn't want to get rid of him, though, did they?
Then get a manager in that doesn't get top 4 and his job not being under pressure. I'm not saying it should be.
But you don't.
I'm not saying it should be.
No, wait,
but it wouldn't make sense, no?
Well, so what you're saying makes sense, but at the same time, you don't bring in a manager like Maresca, who's never managed at the top level, and then you sack him after one season. Like I feel like Poch, I don't think he wasn't sacked. I don't think that he was sacked because of top 4. I think that there was probably a disagreement between him and whoever makes those decisions, and then they parted ways. But obviously, bringing in Maresca, right, that does not show that Chelsea want to compete. Because then you wouldn't have brought in a Maresca. You would have brought in a more proven manager, right? Like he is a rebuild project kind of manager because he's so unproven.
Do you think Chelsea will stick with Maresca for the next 2 or 3 years?
I don't know about 2 or 3.
They finish 6th or 7th.
I don't know about 2 or 3, but I think that he'll be here next season. Like he'll be at Chelsea next season. And then the expectation, depending on what they do, because again, nobody knows what this board wants. Like we all know
the financial side of things,
but we all know what the problems
at without being in the top 4. They have to get in the top 4. The financial side of things are coming out that they're not.
Henry, they don't have a squad that's built for that.
Henry. I understand this, and I get why you're doing the whole managers thing because of the way you have an agenda against your manager, and I think you're just trying to keep.
It's not an agenda. I just don't like. Well, yeah, he's an agenda.
Wait, but then I have a question though. So, do you think that that's the board's priority is competing and winning and getting in top 4? Because if that is the priority, then this summer I don't expect to see them buying any more unproven 18-year-olds. Right?
It's making money though, Will. Though it's making money.
But I
getting in the Champions League gets them more money, no?
But I brought this up on this show probably a month or so ago. I think Chelsea's board might just try to become like a selling club. Like you just become like a blue version of Dortmund. Like you buy young talent, you try and build their profile up, and then you sell them for profit.
That may be what they're doing. And I just look, it's an interesting one in terms of the direction that they're in. But Chelsea fans want Champions League football, and there are Chelsea fans that understand the problems that they have. There are others like David that come on our show who's just willing to see this project and this process through to see where they land at the end of it. And that is all fair. But the conversation is more about where do we think they're going to end up this season? And I've been calling this out for 5 or 6 weeks now. It's not a hatred of Chelsea. It's just the performances are poor. The results, they're averaging around 1.27 points per game. And yes, they had an amazing start when a number of other teams were faulting. So they gave themselves a really big, sort of barrier and a big cushion, especially up until the mid-December point. But they've slowly been regressing. It's just the league position hasn't changed dramatically at this point. And I don't think some Chelsea fans have realized if the performance, I know you hear the results are all that count at this stage, Terry. True. But to keep getting results over the next 7 games, the performances have got to get better. The idea they're going to be able to smash and grab when they don't really have anyone. If Palmer was in form, my mind would be different. And if he turns it around, it may change. But they don't have anyone doing this season what Palmer did last year, where he was burying free kicks, scoring those penalties, scoring many goals in open play. It's not happening right now. And Chelsea have got to buck their ideas at massively. Because the one thing I will say about making money, financially, they need to be in the Champions League really bad. They really, really do. I know it says they've made profits recently, but all that's being scrutinized now because it's selling their women's football team that made an £8 million loss for a valuation of 200 million. Hasn't been approved by the Prem. I think it probably will be. UEFA have already said they're rejecting it. They're not allowing them to compete under FFP. They still don't have a shirt sponsor, as an example. And there's some really talented players they've bought. And I'm not saying everything's bad at Chelsea. Caicedo and Enzo have been looking excellent recently, especially Caicedo. You know, Cole Palmer, we all rant and rave about. There's some really good signings. Gusto's been excellent. Cucurella, I think, has now turned back into the play, was at Brighton. But they have got to spend big this summer. But I think to do that, they've got to be in this Champions League. And they are just
that's how the board view it, though, Terry. Like, I don't think that's how their board views it. Because their actions don't show that. So, like, you have to go based off the actions.
That's fair.
Yeah, and the board is showing. Sorry, so the board is showing us that they don't match up with what the fans' current expectation is.
Exactly.
The fans' current expectation of this squad is top 4. Me personally, looking at the squad at the start of the season, you remember, Terry, I said top 6 max. Top 6. And even with their good run of form, I said, you lot are getting excited because of 12 games. Everyone shouted at Spurs for getting excited about 10 games last season. So I was like, wait it out. Wait till January, then we'll reevaluate what this Chelsea side are really about. And they've shown themselves. This is what the squad was designed to do. When they get a bit of pressure, because of the lack of maturity of the squad, it was always going to fall into decline. There's no one to rally the troops in. And Maresca doesn't have the experience or the respect from the dressing room.
That's the problem with the age thing. Yeah, I agree.
Well, the thing is, though, if Chelsea wanted to make top 4, right? Like, if that was such a priority for them this season, then they had a perfect opportunity in January to make a significant signing to greatly help them. They brought in an 18-year-old from France that nobody's heard of. I just don't think that's their priority.
I think they think this squad can make top 4, though. I think that's their whole thing. You might think this squad can't make top 4. You might think it's not ready to make top 4. It's not.
Well, I thought that it could make top 4. To be fair,
I think this Chelsea.
You think the board thinks so? Yeah.
I think the board think that this squad is good enough to get top 5. It only needs to be top 5. I think this board thinks this Chelsea squad can get top 5. The one thing they cannot do in their model is buy all these young players, have this 5-year plan with 4 different managers, because after a year, if they don't hit expectations, they're sacked. Because then there's no point in buying the young players because they're not going to develop properly. Because they're going to be their key development needs are going to be spent under 3 different managers. What they need is to settle on a manager, and I think they're wanting to give Maresca as much of a chance as possible with this. I don't think that this run of form is on him. I don't think he wants to pick Nkunku, but he hasn't had any other choice. I don't think he quite likes some of the midfield options that he's got. But Lavi's constantly injured. I don't think he's necessarily the biggest fan of Trevor Chalobah at centre-back, but his first choice is constantly injured. The Chelsea squad has some weaknesses, but I think that ownership thinks it can make top 4 with it. And if they get Champions League with it, then they're vindicated in their methods, and it will just be the same thing over and over and over again.
They may. And Jem here says they won 3 of the last 4 Prems. That's not true. Your last 4 Premier League games, you've won 2, lost 1, drawn 1. You beat Leicester, you lost to Arsenal, you beat Spurs 1-0, you drew with Brentford. And the thing is, when you go over the last 15 games, and the reason why I focus on that period is because that was when your performances started to change. That was when fans started having an issue here. You drew with Everton 0-0, got that game where you got beat by Fulham late on, beat by Ipswich, drew with Palace, drew with Bournemouth. You then beat Wolves. The victories in that period have all been below teams that are below you in the form table. The only one now where in the last 15 games that you've beaten above you in the form table has been Wolves, whose form in the last few games has improved and they've won some matches. But when you beat them, they were below you. And you've only got Ipswich left that are below you on that form table. So this is what I'm saying, Jem. And I just don't think this is a crazy statement. If your performances of the last 15 matches don't improve, looking at the results those performances have got you versus the results that the Forests, the Cities, the Villas, the Newcastles have got, it becomes very, very unlikely that you make a top 4 position. You may not even make a Europa League position. Now, you should be in the Europa League next year because you should be winning the Conference League as an example. But I think Chelsea Football Club need Champions League football to genuinely help themselves progress, because money needs to be spent. Big money needs to be spent on players. And I just think it would be a very disappointing season for Chelsea with how fantastically you started, how brilliant you looked until December, to then end up coming 6th or 7th or 8th. It would be a hugely disappointing campaign at the end of the 3rd year of this project. And, I'd be disappointed as a Chelsea fan. Now, if you go for your next 4 Premier League games and win 3 of them, and you beat Fulham, and you beat Everton, and you beat Liverpool, and you beat Ipswich, then fair play. But to do that, my belief is your performances have got to improve. And if they do improve, I'll praise them and say, fucking hell, look, that's a good turnaround. Maresca got the job done. Jackson stood up. Palmer's back on form. Neto's now delivering. But at the same time, all I keep hearing is we're fourth, though, as opposed to we're going to turn it around for this reason. The manager's going to do this and it's going to change. This player will come back into form and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not hearing any rebuttals to the argument around how the performances will change. I'm just hearing, but we're fourth, so it's okay, as opposed to an actual argument. And I'd be worried if I was a Chelsea fan right now. If you're a Chelsea fan and you're not worried, fair play to you. But you could at least give us the common courtesy of saying why you're not worried. At least have a conversation with us, as opposed to just, well, we're fourth.